So after the unboxing video the other day, I promised some kind of review of a couple of the Bridge City tools. One of the reasons is I was surprised at how few reviews of any of their tools exist on YouTube. I mean, on YouTube, there's a review of every little widget you could imagine, and yet I found almost nothing on Bridge City Tools in terms of an actual review. Just a couple little snippets. So anyway, we opened the box before, but let's do it again. This is for the HP9 small MIDI plane. Box is tight, very nice box, as you'd expect. Let's talk about first, let's try to show it here, some of the aesthetics, because I think it's a cute plane. The photographs are deceptive. They make the body of the plane appear to be a dark gray or black. It's not. It is a dark blue. The depth skids, what John Economaki calls depth skids, are a champagne anodized aluminum. The adjuster knob for the tightening down mechanism is sort of a pebble-grained, more luminish color. The cap is again a sort of a blue-gray, and then of course you have steel color on the sole and the blade and the adjuster itself, the depth adjuster. And then you have Bridge City's sort of very common, they're orange. And we're going to talk about this system in a minute. So the overall impression is a lot different than a generic one or two colored tool. When I got it, and I immediately took the blade out, that was one of the things that surprised me, because I'd seen no description of the blade tensioning system. So let me take the blade out and show you. Very easy. Here we have the blade with this orange thing, and immediately I found that the orange thing moved because it's a magnet. John Economaki loves magnets. There's a number of magnets in many of his tools. And I first thought, why is there a magnet? And then when I put it back together, after I'd honed the blade, I kind of figured out why. You can move the magnet into a perfect position for the arm that comes down. And interestingly, when you tighten the arm, it will move the magnet into the correct position to put the maximum amount of leverage. I owned block planes that had the traditional depth adjustment and mouth adjustment, and I always found it a bit of a struggle that to get the lockdown mechanism correct. And it seems to me that this gizmo is a really clever way to do it. I don't know if anybody else has done something similar, but it worked great for me, and suddenly I have no problem untensioning and moving the blade, doing a depth adjustment, retensioning the blade, without worrying that I've thrown everything off. So that, and by the way, that is how it works a traditional way. They recommend when you're going to do a depth adjustment, you start out with the blade literally shaving no wood, and you gradually by like an eighth turn, adjust it until it's taking the shaping you want. And to do that, you loosen the blade, you adjust the tension, retighten the blade. They recommend not tightening this too tight. You don't have to. It puts a lot of pressure on without, really torquing it down, and you shouldn't torque it down. On the other hand, the adjustment for the mouth opening, which is a nice adjustment, you do have to torque a little bit, otherwise it might slip. So I can close the mouth to almost an infinitesimal amount. I can open it up to take a little bit thicker shaving. You're not going to take a really thick shaving with this. Backlash. There is backlash in the system on this. Their recommendation, as I described, is you start out taking no cut and you go deeper into depth. You don't back off. If you start out with too much depth and you back off, you're going to tend to get a little bit of backlash in the system. So better to start shallow and go deeper than the other way around. Blackwood, African blackwood, sapwood, pretty hard, difficult to do. Not really the strong suit, perhaps, of this plane, because it's the angle of the blade is not really set up for this, but it still works. So it actually worked okay. I probably will buy another blade just to set that up at a higher angle. But it's not bad. I mean, there's not a lot of small planes that will touch this very well. In fact, let's talk about small planes. If I know anything about tools, and I don't in many cases, but the one area I do know a lot about is small planes. I've owned many Luthier planes, model maker planes, just general small planes. I probably had 35 or 40 at my max. I guess my point is I've held a lot and used a lot of little planes, little finger planes. I have my wonderful Bill Carters, my wonderful Christopher Lormans. Those are modern but traditional at the same time. So I like to think that I know a little bit about what makes a good small plane. This is a good small plane. Ergonomics is one thing. You can use this in a number of ways. I've been using it with the depth skids on, even if I'm not using the depth skids. I like the extra ability to grip in a number of ways with the depth skids, but you can easily take them off and you end up with a smaller plane without the depth skids. So it's small enough to deal nicely with one hand, but just big enough to put two hands on if you want a little bit more control or pressure. And I like that in a small tool, because sometimes if you only have one hand or a couple of fingers on the thing, it's hard to get control. I like, because I do guitar making, I often use my small planes to shave small pieces. So I'll reverse the plane. Here I have just a piece of dowel, but I'll go like this, just to shave a particular piece to whatever. And again, this plane will be easy to use it. And it's big enough in my hand, but still small enough. The depth skids, I haven't used that much. They're very easy to adjust. You just take your Allen wrench and loosen or tighten all four to the place that you want them to go. The manual has a couple recommendations about ways to do that. And then when you plane, you can plane to depth. For me, as a guitar maker, that is going to prove really nice when I do bracing material. And I'll do an initial pass on the bracing material after I've cut it up to get it to a certain thickness before I carve it. And I'm sure I will use this plane to do that. So at this point, that's about as much as I can tell you. I really don't have any negatives so far that I have discovered with this, with the possible exception of the fact that this mechanism has to be torqued a little bit more to keep the mouth adjustment from slipping, from moving on its own. Everything else is beautifully made.